This is former Indiana basketball player Brian Evans, and you're listening to Indiana Sports Beat with Jim Coyle.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat with Coyle Leary, coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, powered by Rivals, of course, on this Wednesday hump day. Joined now by Dustin DePirick from The Athletic. Great piece yesterday. Make sure you follow Dustin. Great coverage of the Indiana beat, as well as a lot of other things. Dustin, how you doing, brother?
Doing well, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. Todd's with me as always. Hope you're managing through coronavirus confinement.
Yeah, I'm surviving it, hanging in. I mean, same as everybody else. It's starting to get long, right? You know, we're like 11 weeks?
Are you growing the Corona beard? I'd love to see Dustin DePirick in a Corona beard. I can't imagine that.
No. I can make it like 4 or 5 days without shaving, and that's the end of it. I get like itchy and stuff, and I can't deal. So
yeah, there's some guys I've seen that have it. Todd, you're not one of them, but I've seen some pictures of people, and I'm like, yeah, you need to go ahead and shave. That's not a good look for you, man.
Yeah, some people shouldn't be bearded. I'm one of them.
Lots going on. There's not a lot going on, but yet there's still a lot going on under the surface, especially always in the basketball and the recruiting world. A nice piece out yesterday on Khristian Lander. He's reclassifying to 2020. He was on here with us talking about that. That day he decided or made that known that's going to happen, but it's not a complete done deal. As we mentioned that day, but you really pointed out, I think people have not really grasp the entire how the process is working, that he's not completely done, but he's on his way to being done.
Yeah, no, exactly. I just did that story just because I've always wondered, how do kids do this? It's sort of mind blowing to me. And when you think back I think back to, being in high school, and imagine if you told me, all right, in February of my junior year that I had to go take all of my senior year classes and get them done by the middle of the summer, I'd look at you like you were crazy. I couldn't imagine doing that. But so I just basically called the Landers to find out, okay, how is this working? And I talked to Khristian a while back. Indiana's being weird about talking to freshmen now, but he basically told me at the time, hey, I'm starting on the economics class, and this is where this thing is going. Taking 4 classes online on top of just his other studies, obviously, which had to be taken online. Through e-learning, basically, as it was through the last couple of months of the semester. But he's through with an economics class. And as of the last time I talked to him, talked to his dad. He was still working through an English and a government class, and then he's still got a speech class to do. So I'm not sure how much further he might have come along since the last we spoke. But it's an ongoing process. It's one of those situations where you just basically just take them on as online courses. That's the fastest way to get a reclassification done. Basically, he only needed 4 to get the credits necessary, to get the core classes necessary that he needed to be able to call himself a high school graduate and be able to move on. That's sort of where things stand. Basically, he's just reached the point in terms of signing the letter of intent to say, we know that we're going to get done now. And basically, when he initially announced his recruitment, or initially announced his commitment to Indiana, he had decided at that point that he wanted to reclass. I think he put it out there at that point that he had intended to reclass, but didn't want to say it definitively until he passed a certain threshold to be able to say, this is definitely going to get done. That I am safe in saying that this is going to be finished. The amount of work I have left is, to the point now where I am sure that I can finish. So that's kind of obviously the point that he reached, is saying, I'm there. I don't have any worries or concerns that I'm not going to make it. It's the same as basically, you sign your letter of intent in November, usually believing that you're going to get your senior classes done. You're not finished yet at that point, but you're obviously saying, I'm far enough along. I don't have any reason to worry that I'm not going to graduate. This is an inevitability, and obviously that's sort of what Khristian has sort of determined, is this is inevitable, that it's going to get done. It's far enough along. He's made enough progress so far to know that he's going to get it the rest of the way. So it's time to sign a letter of intent and make things official and make the sort of same moves that you usually make when you're going to be a freshman in college.
Yeah, I know we've talked about this, Todd. Both of us have said that we were neither of us mature enough to have done that. And so just the maturity level that it takes to get through all that stuff, and then coming into college a year early, I'm like, man, I was such a moron. I couldn't have dealt with it. But he's been with these guys a lot, and it's just helping him and his game and helping him grow up a lot quicker, actually.
And a lot of it, Jim, is what we've talked about at length with not just Khristian Lander, but a lot of these guys and different people. And the AAU circuit has, forced or allowed, however you want to look at it, these guys to kind of grow up a little bit and go through the process. It used to be, a long time ago, you would go on your first travel road game on a college campus once you're on a team, and your first road trip might be the first road trip you've really ever been on with a basketball team. And that's just not the case anymore. I mean, these guys travel all over the country playing AAU tournaments all over the place. And, they're spending the majority of their summers and, late spring, summer, and then almost right up until school starts, traveling all over the country, playing in big time basketball tournaments. So these guys are they're more mature than you and I were back when we were graduating, but still it's a transition it's not easy. I think what we've learned with a lot of the new reclassifications and things that go on is, these guys have the ability to reclassify if they want to. I can remember going back to your high school counselor years ago, and you remember them having you pick out electives and what classes you wanted to take and all that. Well, I guess my counselor was smart enough to not let me know. I guess I didn't have to take those classes if I didn't want to. I could have just taken the 4 courses I needed to graduate and gone home for the rest of the day, which is the equivalent of what these guys are doing. But anyway, these guys are more mature. They're different now. They've already gone through a lot of these experiences that you and I and guys our age never had the opportunity to.
Yeah, and Dustin, not only that, but with the departure of Justin Smith, he's going to get even more of an opportunity to grow up next season, because obviously, not that we didn't think he was going to see some time as it was. We don't know. Everybody, some people think he's going to start. All that will be determined, but he's going to be playing a lot, I think. And now with that departure, and me and Todd talk about this a lot too. We've heard Archie talk about that up tempo and all that. Well, this roster is kind of heading in that direction now, and I think that's something we're going to see, which means you're going to see a lot of guys like, whether it's Khristian Lander or Anthony Leo or Trey Galloway, all those guys coming in. We're going to see a lot of those guys on the floor early.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Justin's departure, it's weird to consider because you think of all the criticism that Justin gets. I mean, he played the most minutes on last year's team. It's weird to think about that. I mean, he was on the floor the most, obviously played multiple positions, was used at the 3 and the 4 last year. And, he's obviously a guy that could play tempo himself, but what it obviously opens up is the combinations you can have, are a lot different basically. And you can go, they're going to have to go 3 guards on more occasions, basically, to be able to put a lineup out there. So you have situations where you might have, you could put a Lander and a Finney out there and then a Durham or a Franklin at the 3. Durham is probably is capable of playing every position 1, 2, 3, and he will, I think, imagine have to do so. Franklin obviously I think is going to play some level of 3, which is not. I don't think he had to do that very much last year. I don't think they were in a position where they could do that, where they could move him out there. But I mean, it's certainly a position he's capable of playing. So they're going to have smaller lineups, and like you said, I mean, like Leo will have minutes that he can get at the 2 and the 3. Galloway will have minutes he can get at the 2 and the 3. Geronimo will have minutes there, the 2 and the 3. But also, they're going to have more options because of that 3 spot really being open, and that'll shake things up for sure and give them more opportunities to play around with some different kind of lineups. And again, specifically with 3 guard lineups that will, force, I think, Lander and Finney to be on the floor at the same time. I think that's sort of the question, saying, okay, well, how many minutes is Lander going to play? You're looking at a junior coming back and Rob Finney, who's logged a lot of minutes playing point guard, but Smith's departure opens up more of an opportunity for those two to play together, and it's less of a situation of, okay, who is going to win that job? And you could see Lander stepping in and just winning that job, just being the guy. I mean, there's definitely some areas just in terms of his athletic profile that's a little bit superior to Finney's. But again, Finney's played the position for 2 years, has run run a college Big Ten offense for 2 years. Obviously, he's gone through some injuries, and that's held him back from some of the progress you would have expected him to make if he was completely healthy. But you can potentially just have them on the floor at the same time. It'll help. Obviously, I think if Tennessee, I think is certainly capable of playing off the ball, and I think it might help him as a shooter, put him more positions where he's getting catch and shoot opportunities, as opposed to having to make a lot more happen off of the bounce. So it obviously again makes opportunities for that entire freshman class, where with Justin out there, they're a little bit pinned behind, especially the three wings definitely are pinned behind if Smith is getting minutes at the three, or a lot of minutes at the three, and then you're still worrying about getting minutes for Jerome Hunter. So now basically you have minutes for Hunter, you have some space for these freshmen, you have space for 3-guard lineups. All of those things are sort of become more possible with Smith out of lineup, which again does not mean that Justin Smith isn't a loss because he was a productive guy. But it does again force a lot of these guys into more early playing time.
And while this COVID-19 pandemic has actually been a blessing for someone like Khristian Lander, who's working to reclassify and do that stuff, perfect, because you can't do anything else but study and get all that out of the way. There's been a negative. It's kept them from doing a lot of the things they would normally be doing basketball-wise. So, and that is a little critical, but the way things are looking, it looks like students will be back on campus maybe sooner rather than later, so that will be mitigated. But if someone like that's not able to get in there, they kind of lose those summer reps with the team that they would normally get, and that's got to have an effect.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's going to have an effect nationwide. But yeah, no, definitely on the freshmen. They're and you got to imagine everybody's situation's differently. And I don't know what everybody's deal is in terms of who has access to a court or even a driveway at this point, because you can't even go to playgrounds. I don't know. I know in Indianapolis, basically every single court is either, the hoop's off, or there's a board through it. So you don't know who. Like, I know Lander does have access to a gym. Literally, there's a church, I guess, up the block from him that has given him and his dad the key that he's allowed to, just go in, whenever he wants to and get some shots up. But, even then, even if you're getting that sort of ability to get some individual work, you're not getting the teamwork. You're not getting used to
exactly
your
that
cohesiveness. And that's really key.
Yeah.
But up to this point, this would probably either be this week right now or next week, when they would actually probably be showing up on campus anyway. Up to this point, and keep in mind, I know things have definitely been different, but up to this point, they haven't missed any team stuff. Maybe Cliff Marshall might have given them some little workout stuff to do, but really it's been real minimal impact up to this point. Now, if they can't get in there in the next 2 weeks, then that'll have a negative effect down the road, I think. But up to this point, there's really not been anything I think these young freshmen would have missed out on.
I think you're right.
Yeah, but I think it's a question of access, though. I mean, I don't know who all has access to what. Lander's fortunate just from talking to him. I mean, he's got a guy who has a gym, that he can go to, and that's the thing.
It's always good to have a guy.
You're not necessarily guaranteed access to that, depending on who you are. Maybe you have a bucket in your yard, maybe you don't.
I'm not trying to be argumentative with you, Dustin, but trust me, we're basketball people. Everyone's always finds a way to find a gym. Believe me.
Hey, Dustin, another thing, with now they've got 2 open schollies for this year still, if I'm correct, and then you've got 3 for 21. I can't, and I keep saying this, I can't imagine them letting both of those go open for this season. There's just no way from a depth standpoint. We saw what the hit they took 2 years ago from injuries and how that can quickly happen. And then, next thing you know, you got 6 guys you can use. So I can't imagine them not bringing somebody in, at least a grad transfer. I just saw Tim sent us in on the text line that from St. John's, a Figueroa kid, that 6'6" wing is reportedly hitting the transfer portal. But there's tons of guys out there. But there's going to continue to be people that surprise. Justin Smith was kind of late. Well, this guy's even later. So there's always going to be people out there.
Yeah, sure. No, I'm sure they'll definitely look in terms of what's out there. It's part of the question is, okay, what do you need? And I think the thing that they could most help is maybe have another guy that you could throw there into 5, so to make sure that Jackson Davis is getting some work at the 4. I'm sure he's going to play at the 5 too with Brunk. That might be an area to look. But I mean, I think you also look back that. Last season, basically Archie Miller was, in the middle was saying, we're playing too many guys. We're playing 11 guys, and this is actually too much. And so there is sort of an issue of making sure that everybody's happy and making sure that everybody's getting minutes. It might help obviously to maybe have less of reliance on the freshmen, to go get a grad transfer. But I don't know that it's something that they're definitely going to want, and especially when it comes to getting a bigger guy. I mean, obviously Purdue was also in a situation where they were looking at that after Matt Harms transferred. Looked around the market, said, you know what? No, I don't like anything that we have. I don't like any of these options. I don't feel like any of these guys are good enough to play for us. So they might make a similar determination. Like you said, there are still going to be guys who come through. I think COVID-19 is having an effect there. I think there are some guys that are sitting around and thinking, they have a lot of time to sort of spend with their thoughts. And that's, I think, caused some of the guys to maybe leave a little bit later than you would ordinarily expect. So yes, some guys could still hit the market, and I'm sure they'll keep their eyes open to see what's there. But I don't think it's a guarantee either that they're going to take somebody. I mean, it would make sense, but ultimately, I also think that Miller is okay with a little bit of a shorter rotation and not necessarily trying to play 12 guys. He had to play 11 for a while last year, and I think he got tired of doing that.
Another talk a lot about getting older. Teams want to get older. Archie's talked about, getting older and staying older. Unfortunately, I don't see this team getting to that point for still a couple more years with these open Scullies. And Trace Jackson Davis, doubtful will be here after next season. It's possible. But, 2 years from now, he's not going to be here for sure. And then you're going to have Al Durham's gone. And so they're still not really – they haven't gotten to that yet. They're still trying to roll to get to where they're getting older, but they're not quite there yet.
No, you're right. And it's been you've had some shakeups, and I think you had sort of a weird place to start where you didn't necessarily have one big class getting you started. And you really look at it even at I guess the 18 class with Langford and all those guys. I mean, I think the only one still on the roster is Finney, right? Finney and Hunter are the 2 guys out of that 5 that are still on the roster, and Hunter obviously lost a whole season, so he's sort of behind the rest of that class, and you've already lost Forrester and Anderson to transfer out of that group, so you haven't necessarily seen them all sort of coming up together. But yeah, no, it could take a while, and hey, if I've heard people talking, yesterday about Lander possibly being a one and done. So that's another situation where that doesn't necessarily get you any closer to that. There's no guarantee of that happening, certainly, but obviously he's a highly recruited kid. And so it's not entirely out of the question. So if you lose him and Jackson Davis to the NBA after this year, if that's the thing that happens, then yeah, on top of that, you would lose Durham. And so, you have a couple of guys that are going to be veterans, basically the potential of Finney being a senior and, Hunter being a junior and Franklin. There's a little bit of experience, but you're still not at a situation where you're loaded with senior and junior type guys. So it's just been sort of a funky class situation for Archie Miller from the time that he built it, from the roster that he inherited and just everything that sort of transpired down the way. You haven't necessarily had a group of 3 and 4 seniors and 3 and 4 juniors together in a class, just sort of getting older together. It just for various reasons just hasn't exactly acted that way.
Dustin, I appreciate you joining us as always. Make sure you give him a follow, especially at The Athletic. Join him on Twitter. Todd's got the Masters going here. We're going to have to shut those birds up, though. They're driving us crazy. Dustin, I can't thank you for joining us as always, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
This is Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat with Coyle and Leary. Indiana Sports Beat is now a part of the Rivals Network. You can go to thehoosier.com to sign up. It's free. Catch the show there each day live or at your convenience. You can also like or follow us on Facebook, follow the show's rebroadcast anywhere you podcast. If we're not on a radio station where you live, we should be. Let your local station know they need to carry Indiana Sports Beat with Coyle and Leary, or simply go to thehoosier.com.